On. Break. Press.
Okay, the reason I was holding my ears is because I used to be a machine gunner. And I still carry the scars of that. This time, Virginia 5th District Delegate Israel O'Quinn is supposed to be here, but Delegate O'Quinn has had to go to Richmond. He has been recently elected to as a delegate to the House in Richmond, so he couldn't be here. He had to go there today for some training, but he has sent a letter, and I will read his remarks today. November the 19th, 2011. Dear friends, I regret that I am unable to join you today, but I have to be in Richmond for a mandatory orientation for the Virginia House of Delegates. It was a great honor to be elected to the House of Delegates and to represent so many great people in Bristol and beyond. It is because of the work of a Bristolian that you're gathered here today. John W. Emmert's discovery on February the 14th of 1889 was an amazing find. The Bat Creek stone he discovered is as fascinating as it is mystifying. While we may never have answers to all the questions that surround this stone, it is remarkable that a man from Bristol made such a discovery. It is unfortunate that he has not received the credit he is due. However, many great people in our nation's history has not received the proper credit until long after they have passed. And you stand in East Hill Cemetery, itself a historical location, reflect upon this amazing discovery and allow Mr. Emmert's memory to rest in peace. May his discovery be appreciated and enjoyed by folks for generations to come. With kind regards, I am sincerely Delegate-elect Israel O'Quinn. And we thank you. We're sorry that he can't be with us today. Next on a list of speakers, we have Police Chief Wayne Wade. Where are you, Chief?
My involvement with this is from a phone call about a year and a half ago from Mr. James Dodson. He called me and advised one of the Bristol, Tennessee law enforcement officers has been involved in a controversy and wanted some information from me. And at that point, I was expecting to hear a name I knew, but I didn't. And I asked him about when this happened. He said in the 1870s would have been when this man would have been employed. Come to find out, Bud Phillips had written in his book that John W. Emmert was a constable in Bristol, Tennessee at that time period. However, it's hard for me just to go by, while I love Bud to death, I cannot verify without actually finding out the individual city records. So at that point, I researched the city records and found that Mr. Emmert was, in fact, a constable as of December the 13th, 1872. He was appointed by our city council. A little bit of brief history. In the 1800s, from 1856, when our city was founded, until 1890, we had a police department. Our city had constables. And these men were men in our community that were respected, that were dependable people, that they could actually enforce laws. And in that time period, our city did not really have any ordinances to speak of. They would, as they had a problem, they would write a city ordinance. And back then, it was a total different type of situation. There would be horses tied up in places they weren't supposed to be. There would be people would leave their chickens and their hogs and things like that in downtown where it would bother other people. So the constables were to have to enforce those type of ordinances. They would also be tax collectors. They would also remove dead bodies. They would do whatever the city fathers called them to do. And interesting enough, it kind of took a little personal interest. My great-great-grandfather was in Bristol, Virginia at the same time period as a town sergeant doing the same type of thing. So I was very fortunate to be able to find the exact record in our city minutes books and found it and made a photocopy and verified that was his information. And he was actually a law enforcement officer here in our community.
next on the list is Scott. Where's Scott?
I'm right here.
There you are. Scott Waller.
All right.
Come on in here, Scott.
Hey, Deb. Hi, everybody. My name is Scott Wolter, and I'm from Minnesota. I guess you call me a Yankee, right? Anyway, I am really pleased and honored to be here today. What a great turnout for John Emmert, and boy, is it appropriate. I know his family's here, and all the people that are here supporting him. It's awesome. You know, I'm a geologist by education and thankfully by profession. I run a laboratory in Minnesota, a materials forensic laboratory. I basically do autopsies on concrete and rock. And about 10 years ago, there was an artifact that came into my laboratory called the Kensington Runestone. It was found in 1898, not long after John Emmert made his discovery. And it had a long inscription on it that confounded the experts. And instead of trying to really dig deep and figure out what it was, they dismissed it as a hoax. And they blamed the farmer, Olaf Ullman, who found it, as being the forger. Does that sound familiar? It should. Anyway, I did my work, I wrote my report, and I presented my findings as I do all the time whenever I do an investigation. And I was surprised at first and puzzled when the academics came back and said, well, you're wrong, Mr. Wolter. And I said, well, no, I'm not. I mean, didn't you see the evidence that I presented? And at first I was puzzled, and then I got upset. And I decided to dig into this thing to try to figure out what was going on. And I basically stumbled onto a paradigm of history that artifacts and contact people that came here prior to Columbus, this didn't happen. So anything that's found that supports that has to be pushed aside. I have since immersed myself into trying to understand and find out more about these mysterious artifacts and sites. And of course, guess what came up? The Bat Creek Stone. About 3 years ago, I met a woman by the name of Leslie Kalin, who I would like to have come up here right now. Hi, Leslie. Are you having fun today? Leslie called me because she bought a home a couple years ago, and there were rumors that there was a cave on her property. And she and her husband, Phil, found that entrance to the cave, and inside that cave they found Civil War, pre-Civil War era inscriptions that dated all the way to the early 1900s. And she found some runes, which is what the runestone is, carved in runes. And of course, she found me, and I jumped on a plane and I flew right down. We went into the cave, and unfortunately the runes were not old. But I found out that Leslie was a member of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indian. And I said, well, gee, it'd be nice to talk to some of the people in your tribe. She said, my father, Donald Rose, is one of the senior elders. So we got together, and I asked them if they knew what the Bat Creek Stone was. They said no. And after I told them about it, they looked at me and said, that's another thing they didn't tell us about. Well, I then asked them if they would support me in my quest to try to perform a geological examination of the Bat Creek Stone. And the tribe did. They were amazing. I conducted that examination about a year and a half ago, almost a year and a half ago, and I found that the weathering of the inscription was very old. I also looked at all the reports and the letters that were written at the time of the discovery in 1889, as the mayor said. And I can tell you that if John Emmert applied for a job with my laboratory, I'd hire him today. He did an amazing job. Detailed, thorough, incredible job. Anyway, they thought that the inscription was Paleo-Cherokee. And at the time, the thesis is that the mound building cultures and these amazing, interesting structures that they couldn't explain were done by the native people. This being a Paleo-Cherokee inscription fit with that thesis, and so they wrote it up that way. It went in the archives and people forgot about it. 80 years later, in 1970, the stone was found by a woman researcher who flipped the stone around and said, this looks like something else. She brought it to the attention of a Semitic scholar who said, this is an ancient Mediterranean inscription that dates back over 1,500 years. The Smithsonian Institute immediately said, oh no, can't have that. It's a fake. And John Emmert, he found it. He's the forger. And what I find incredible is that there was no effort to try to get to the bottom of it, to properly investigate it. This can't be, so we have to make it go away. Anyway, page 2. We'll see what happens as time goes on. We're going to let the experts decide what this inscription is, who did it, and what it means for history. But regardless of what that history is, I'm speaking for myself, and I think I can speak for the Cherokee, that they don't have a horse in the race. They don't have a particular story that they want. They just want to know the truth. And that's what I want. There are many people to thank here today, and one of them is James Dodson. James, if you would come forward. James has worked tirelessly with Leslie to find out who this man was, because once we finished the analysis, the tribe figured out pretty quickly, this guy didn't fake this thing. But who was this man? And I'll tell you what right now, it's because of this girl right here. She took it upon herself. She felt empathy for this person. She knew that he had been wrongly and falsely accused of being a hoaxer. She knew about Olaf Ullman, and she said, I want to find out who this man is. So she came here to Bristol. She called her friend James, and they found out that he was buried here, that he was a Civil War veteran who was wounded in battle, that he was a constable. You heard Blaine talk about that. And he was a Freemason. You have to be vetted to be members of these organizations. You have to be a respected member of your community. You have to be an honorable person. And in 1970, the Smithsonian Institute took that honor away. But as I said to the Ullman family many years ago, it's never too late to right a wrong. And so today, that's what's happening here. And John Emmert's honor is being restored. His family is here. The people of those organizations are here. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty moved by this whole event. But I'll tell you right now, if it wasn't for Leslie Kalin, this wouldn't have happened. So, thank you, Leslie. And remember this day, because it's a historic day. Thank you. Okay. Well, if you thought you were done with me, you're not. The chief of the Cherokee, Eastern Band of Cherokee Indian, was unable to be here today. Leslie's father, Donald Rose, the senior elder with the Eastern Band of Cherokee, recently had a mild heart attack, and we said, you stay home. And he asked me if I would read a statement on behalf of the Eastern Band of Cherokee, so I'm going to do that right now. The Cherokee people view the stone from at least two perspectives. First, it was excavated in a Cherokee burial mound, and as such has spiritual significance. To have it displayed in a manner insulting to the Cherokees, upside down as a fake, demonstrates a disregard for feelings and culture of the native people. We are offended that the word fraud was associated with the stone during the time it has been on display by the McClung Museum in Tennessee. However, the fact that a highly reliable scientific analysis has established that it was not a fraud is pleasing to the tribe. More importantly, the stone has taken on much greater importance as a result of an estimate of the age of the inscription to be more than 1,500 years. It is one of the most ancient artifacts yet found in Cherokee territory, or in the nation for that matter. Historically, the Cherokees have been seekers of truth. We have long believed that people other than the indigenous peoples, indigenous Americans, have visited the Cherokees many centuries ago. Our verbal history reflects these beliefs. Thus, we are pleased to have received confirmation of our belief. We hold the Bat Creek stone to be of great value and eagerly await the day it will be returned to us, so that we may display it properly in our museum and share it with the world. Don Rose, Tribal Elder.